Welcome to A Heart for Home Education. My name is America, home educator to my 3 children ages 9, 7, and 5. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my curriculum pick for the 2025-2026 school year. If you watched my recent video, then you may remember that I was weighing my options between the Alveary, Ambleside Online, Simply Charlotte Mason, and the Children's Tradition. After a lot of discussion and thinking and prayer and digging a little bit deeper, I have made my decision for what curriculum we will be using for next year and hopefully for years to come. When I made that video, I was heavily leaning towards Ambleside Online. In fact, I was almost already decided upon using Ambleside Online, and I did not think there would be much that could sway me away from using AO. I was really excited about it as an option, really excited about the books and everything. And then several people commented in that last video saying, everything that you're saying sounds like you should look more into the Children's Tradition. In that last video, I barely touched on the Children's Tradition because I really wasn't considering it all that heavily. I just thought there were a couple of things that Ambleside Online was doing better or in ways that I preferred. And I was a little bit worried about it being a newer curriculum. But after those comments from people on my last video, I wanted to dig deeper into it myself. I wanted to look more closely, listen to what I could again, read blogs from Amanda Foss more, and just really kind of rule it out. That was kind of my goal, was like, okay, let me just make sure that I don't want this curriculum, and then I'll for sure be settled on Ambleside Online. Well, let me tell you what, that is not what happened at all. Once I dug deeper, I fell in love with the Children's Tradition more than Ambleside Online. And so I'm here to tell you that I will be using the Children's Tradition for the 25-26 school year with my 9-year-old, 7-year-old, and 5-year-old. And by the time next school year comes, they will be 10, 8, and 6. Now, this is early. I actually was not planning on sharing any of this for a little while now, but there is a reason why I'm sharing it now, because there's a unique opportunity coming this coming weekend, April 4th and 5th, to learn more about the Children's Tradition if you are curious about it without having to purchase the entire curriculum. And I will share more about that at the end of the video, but I just wanted you to be aware that there's a reason why I'm sharing so early what I've decided on. So in my last video, I barely talked about what the Children's Tradition even is, and for abbreviation's sake, we can call it TCT. So the TCT is a newer curriculum that is based on a truly classical education. It is created by Amanda Foss, and she is pulling from the work of John Sr., who was an educator in the 1980s at a college, and he created a program for college students because when he went to teach them the great books of the Western tradition, he realized that they did not have a strong enough foundation in good books and just the real world in general to be able to go on and tackle the great books. So when he found that these students' educations were lacking, he made up an integrated humanities program with the help of some other educators, and it was called the IHP, and this was in the 80s. And the idea of this program was to give these students an education in everything that they should have received during their childhood. So his curriculum emphasized the poetic mode of learning, which immersed students in the great tradition through things like songs and poetry, Latin, dance, stargazing, and discussing good books. And his goal was really to awaken them to reality. This was a holistic approach to education that aimed to engage the senses and the emotions rather than just the intellect. So a huge portion of John Sr.'s students actually became converted to Christianity through his integrated humanities program, which was not the goal of the program per se. And so sadly, the program was ultimately shut down because this was at a secular college. From my understanding, the college was a little bit alarmed about all of these conversions and thinking that maybe John Sr. was doing something wrong with the program, but I think we could see it as him doing something exactly right with the program. So you may not notice anything different in your video right now, but I actually had to take a break from filming earlier unexpectedly, and then I finished filming, but I did not have my mic working properly. I think my mic died or something. So I had no audio for like 30 minutes of video that I recorded. So we are picking back up later in the evening. So if the lighting's different and if I look tired, that is why. So I am going to jump in and talk about the children's tradition and what it is as a program. So Amanda Foss has put together a curriculum based on John Senior's work, and she has made a program for years 1 through 7 formally. And then in the edition that is coming out on Friday, April 4th, 2025, there will be some preschooling years as well, kind of including the good books that you can be reading to your child in the nursery, the true nursery stage of schooling, ages 0 to 7. So really, if you have a baby right now and you're eager to get started in this journey, then you can purchase the children's tradition and have this wide feast of philosophy at your fingertips now as you raise your child up and eventually homeschool them in this way. So the first half of the children's tradition is a philosophical guide on education. What is education? What is man pursuing through his education? How should our education point us to God? How we're educating our children point them to God? And Amanda has done an absolutely phenomenal job putting together this guide that I think she should just publish as a standalone book, because it is an incredible treatise on just education, just classical education. She's done a great job culling together all of these resources. And so that is the first half of the curriculum. It's so invaluable. It's something that I would have loved to have read when my children were younger. As you know, you're reading Mason to help you prepare for homeschooling. I think this is an amazing tool to have as well. And then the back half of the curriculum is the actual guide, the actual things that our children will be interacting with, the plans, the books, some timetables, and Amanda has it all laid out very nicely, kind of by what area of study you are focusing on. So she just kind of goes block by block and gives an amazing guide, an amazing layout for why we teach these things, how we should teach these things, and what she thinks the classical tradition would have us do with each of these studies in these books. This is definitely not a hand-holding guide where she tells you step by step, day 1, read this chapter and talk about these things, and here's your captain idea. None of that. It's not a hand-holding type curriculum. Amanda focuses on the philosophy that will equip you to use these resources with your children. And so she does a great job of laying out what to do, how to do it, but also somehow manages to keep this very relaxed and peaceful approach to all of this. So Amanda created the children's tradition with DIY homeschoolers in mind. And that means that she knows that parents are going to have to combine certain ages of students. Parents might have already read some of these books to their children, and all sorts of different combinations like that. Amanda encourages you to DIY what you can where it is appropriate. Of course, a year 7 being paired with a year 1 for everything is not going to be completely beneficial to either of those students. So she kind of goes through when to separate students and when to combine them. And that's very helpful. But I just really like that it is geared towards, hey, I know you're going to make this your own. So here's some ways that you can do that. So this curriculum is way more than just a book list. I know we've talked about John Senior's book list, which I've been using for years. And this curriculum really expounds on that. And it gives guidance and structure and sort of a flow throughout your years of when you should maybe try this book, when you should try this one. Maybe you should wait to try this book. And so I think it's a really comprehensive and comforting scope to have, to know when to be reading these certain books and maybe when to hold off. And I think just seeing how they all fit together and how they're all kind of woven together is really helpful, and to me has been just way more than a book list. Amanda also includes and encourages real life experiences to include with your children, examples of timetables, rhythms, benediction tables. But I want to be very clear that there are no specific day-to-day lesson plans. Amanda tries to equip you with the philosophy and the pedagogy of the great tradition of what Mason would have us do with the resources that John Senior has recommended. So now on to what drew me personally to use the children's tradition. So I originally heard about the children's tradition through an interview that Autumn Kern from the Commonplace did with Amanda back in, I think, around July of last year. And at that point, I had already made my DIY curriculum. And so I was all set, and I didn't feel super tempted to look into it then, although I thought that it looked beautiful. And then all throughout the school year, I had heard really great things about the children's tradition from members in Common House, which is Autumn Kern's Patreon type community. And the things that people were saying were really encouraging and really lovely to hear. I was intrigued, but I was also a little bit nervous because it was the beta year. And so I was not totally on board. And I was also just more drawn to Ambleside Online. And so when I posted my video about what I was thinking of using, I was pretty sure that I was going to be using Ambleside Online, but I wasn't totally ready to like commit and say that's what I was using. But on that video, I had some people comment and encourage me to look into the children's tradition more because it sounded a lot like what I was looking for. And based on what they had seen on my channel, they just thought that I should look into it a little bit more. And they were right. I thank you so much if that was you. And so I decided to at least just look at the curriculum, to kind of dig into it again more, to listen to some more interviews that Amanda Foss had done, to read more of her blog and listen to her podcast. And then I was able to look through the beta version, which Amanda had published last year as just kind of a trial run before the official launch. And what really drew me to it was just the rich philosophy behind all of it. Reading through the philosophy portion of the curriculum, like before I even looked at the books, when I was just reading through the philosophy of the curriculum, I just realized that this is the type of education that I have been searching for and hoping to give my children throughout all these years of trying different things, trying the CMEC. Like, this type of education is actually what I originally thought a Charlotte Mason education would be like. But then once you get into it, it feels to me just very segmented and fast moving, and you've got to stick to the timetable. And if you don't finish this, then you won't get to this. You've got to keep moving. And what I've come to realize is that my family we just go at a slower pace. We like to linger on things. We like to chew on things for longer. The Charlotte Mason approach, especially to the timetable, which you have to really stick to if you're going to get to all of those things using the Alveary or the CMEC. That super strict timetable is really stressful to me, and it feels really rushed and hurried, and like some outside force is like driving our day, and I feel out of control, and I ultimately cannot sustain it for very long. So reading through the philosophy portion of the children's tradition before Amanda even talks about timetables or anything, it just felt like a big sigh of relief. It can be this simple. It really is just like living for us. It's the natural rhythms that my family and I have just stepped into throughout our homeschooling years, and especially this past year, making my own DIY curriculum and having a slower pace to our homeschool has been a really beautiful thing to watch unfold, because we are doing these things just out of pure love and joy for the things, and not just trying to keep up and keep the pace. We have just embraced these things because they're beautiful and they're true and they're good and they're lovely and they make us happy and joyful. So the rhythm of the children's tradition, from what I can see and from what I've heard from pretty much all of the mothers that have used it this past beta year, it just seems to be the rhythm that we've naturally adopted through my DIY curriculum this past year. I knew that any other Charlotte Mason curriculum, such as the Alveary or AO, does have some type of element of box checking and keeping up and staying on schedule and not falling behind. And I just haven't had that with my DIY curriculum. It's just been a very slow and natural pace. We've gotten through a ton of readings just because we like them and we enjoy them, but it just hasn't felt like, oh, I need to make sure to read these 9 pages this day, and I need to make sure that, oh, if we miss a week, then we're going to have to make it up this time. Like, it's just not like that, because I'm realizing, we want to be done at the beginning of May, mid-May, with school. And there might be some books that we are not on pace to finish, but we really like these books. And so if I'm not done with them the beginning of May, we will just keep reading them into the summer because they're good books and we enjoy them. So all that to say, all of this keeping up, staying on schedule, sticking to this very brisk timetable. I just don't get that sense at all with TCT. It just seems like a very restful, life-giving pace to just slow down and to truly enjoy these resources because they are good. That was the main thing from feedback from other mothers in Common House or wherever I found it, was that everyone says that it just feels really restful. It feels peaceful and unhurried. And to me, that sounds like a scholé approach to learning, which is something that I am really desiring and trying to pursue for my children and myself. This is the element that brings us so much joy in our own homeschool, and an element that I'd probably have to leave behind in some respects if I personally were to use AO or the Alveary. Now, I'm not saying that if you are using AO or the Alveary or the CMEC that you do not have a scholé approach to learning or a restful, peaceful schedule. I know that a lot of people can use those curriculums and feel really at peace and happy and keep up with it all and feel joyful keeping up with it all. So I do not think that those are bad choices at all, but I've just learned so much about myself and my children as homeschoolers this past year through using my DIY curriculum, that I know that each home is different, each household is different, each mother is different, and all of the children are different. So please just know that I am not trying to say anything negative about what you may have chosen for your school year. Another thing that I really love about the children's tradition that drew me to it, definitely more so than Alveary, is that yes, the guide is $250, but it lasts you from year one, even before year one, to year 7, and it has all of the books planned out for you, all of the readings planned out for you. All of the years of readings are planned out for you in the guide. And then the books, as far as I know, stay the same. I know some books changed from the beta to this year, but all of the books stay the same. So I'm not waiting for a new program to be released each spring to have to buy a whole new round of books and potentially not reuse many of the books that I've purchased for previous years. And so really this is a lot more economical, and it just makes a lot more sense to me because the good books are always the good books. So why would we not read the good books? And I just love that this goes until year 7 because my one son is going into year 4, year 5, probably a mix of the two. And so we still have a solid 3 years left using this as a guide. And then I have one going into year 1 next year. And so, Lord willing, we will be able to use 7 or 8 years of this curriculum with him. Another thing that I love about the children's tradition is that the subjects are integrated. It is not divided up and segmented by subjects per se, because education is a science of relations, as Mason teaches us. We can read one book and learn so many streams of knowledge through just that one book. And I have really seen that blossom and be very true throughout my DIY curriculum year. For instance, we are reading Caddy Woodlawn right now, which is a historical fiction based on a true story. And we are learning geography and multiple historical events in the US and abroad. We are learning about different science principles. We are learning about character, morals, virtue. So many things are just in one book. It has been so rewarding to watch these books just walk us through all these different paths and streams of knowledge, and just to truly delight in the knowledge that we are learning and not having to segment our day so much, because these books are just doing a good job because they're good books. Another thing that I really love about this curriculum is that it teaches us how to be a part of the great conversation. It teaches us how to participate in the great tradition of classical education. Because as someone who is not classically educated, I went to public school, and as someone who is still very much getting my footing in the classical education world, I just feel so ill-equipped sometimes to participate in this type of education. But I'm so grateful and appreciative that Amanda has curated this body of work that has equipped me to hopefully day by day work towards being part of the great tradition of classical education, and just day by day including and implementing more of these ideals into our homeschool, into our just daily life and daily rhythms. It just seems to seamlessly fit into what we are already doing in our homeschool. Not to say that I was already completely on the path that Amanda has written in the children's tradition, because that's not necessarily true. But the rhythms and the habits and the structure seem to be what our family has naturally gravitated towards through this DIY curriculum year. I'm just so grateful that this option provides me with like a long-term structure and support and a lot more guidance long-term, and that I don't have to spend so much time this summer and every summer trying to plan out our school years. Like this, it's already laid out. These are the good books. This is when we should read them or try to read them. And really the work on my behalf is just going to be kind of customizing it and doing a little bit of DIYing with combining some years. Now, the biggest draw towards the children's tradition for me is the poetic mode of learning. Now, this is something that I am still learning about, but what I have learned has deeply resonated with me and has really changed my approach to homeschool. I don't feel totally qualified to speak about this, but I'm just going to share how it has impacted me, and then hopefully it will encourage you, if you don't know about it already, hopefully it will encourage you to dig deeper on your own from someone who does know more than me. So the poetic mode of learning, as I understand it, is giving children rich and expansive firsthand experiences with real things, with reality, to preserve their wonder and their love of those things and ultimately of God. I have heard Amanda reference this, but this is a very good picture of what poetic learning would be. So say your child is on a nature walk with you and they find a rock, and then they're like, I love rocks and I want to learn more about rocks. What us moderns would do, myself included, is hop on the library website and reserve a bunch of rock library books. That would be one of my first instincts for sure. And then we would get the books, we would read all about rocks from faraway places, look at rocks, maybe watch some YouTube videos about rocks, do an arts and crafts project about rocks, and then all of a sudden our kids are like, okay, I'm done with rocks, I don't care anymore. The poetic mode of learning about rocks would be, okay, if they're interested in rocks, let's go find rocks in our creek. Let's go on our nature walk to that one spot that I know there's a lot of cool rocks. Let's just look at the rocks and hold them, draw the rocks that are in front of us, touch them, see them, throw them, feel their weight, feel their warmth. And that is a far more developmentally appropriate and wonder embodying practice to have them just be with the rock than to sift through 20 library books about rocks that are in faraway places. Now, there is a time and place for that eventually, but my kids are still young, and now is not the time for them to be analyzing rocks. It's time for them to just see and behold the rocks that are in front of them, the rocks that are in their places, in their home, and to appreciate and love those and know those for what they are. So the poetic mode of learning is ultimately about protecting their wonder and their natural love of learning, letting them experience things firsthand, touching them, seeing them, throwing them when appropriate, tasting them when appropriate, feeling the weight, feeling the warmth, without giving them an exhaustive unit study that kind of beats to death the topic, and then the child is no longer interested. And so we want to give them this rich experience first, so that as it becomes developmentally appropriate to add more layers of knowledge onto this topic, there's a very strong foundation and there's a very strong love and wonder at whatever this topic is, that it can withstand adding those layers without quenching the flame of wonder by all these layers of knowledge. So over the past year or so, it's become very important to me to protect my children from things that they're just not developmentally ready to participate in, such as analyzing literature, pulling apart things that they haven't even fully known and appreciated yet, memorizing disembodied facts just for the sake of memorizing. It has really been a goal of mine, and I feel like my DIY curriculum has really helped me to protect that poetic mode of learning. And there have been some things throughout the year that I've realized, like, oh, this is a little bit analytical. This is a little bit over their heads. And I'm also noticing that, like, that's why it's not working. That's why this area of our curriculum is not working. So I have talked about our USA Day and how it felt clunky and it just was not working. And I realized it was because it was far too analytical to open up an atlas and say, like, this is how many people live here. This is the highest mountain peak. This is the temperature. This is what it looks like. This is a brief history. These are the exports, imports. Not that I would always just sit and read those, but that's essentially what it was. My children did not know these places enough to engage in that type and level of analytical information. It has been far better to just find a good story from that state. And then my children, once we hear about it later, they're like, oh yeah, Maine, that's where so-and-so's from. That's where Sarah Plain and Tall is from. And so giving them that story, giving them something to actually know and love about the thing before digging in and analyzing it is the poetic mode of learning for us right now. And so it has just been a very important focus for me this past year. And I love that the children's tradition is going to help me grow in that practice even more. And of course, the curriculum itself is the poetic mode. Another huge plus to the children's tradition is the Toolshed community. Amanda has a network community that is subscription based and it's very affordable. And there's all types of different content on that community. So it's much like Common House, but just more niche because it's more focused on one curriculum. Amanda has a lot of great teaching segments on there, teaching about the poetic mode. She has some live chats, live sessions, things like that. There's lots of women in there and a huge variety of topics of conversation there. And so I have found that to be very beneficial. And I think that is really beautiful and something that I fully want to embrace. So I am sharing all of this because the children's tradition launches officially on April 4th, 2025, and it will go live then. You can pre-order it now. But this Friday is the official release. I'm very excited to look at the finished, finalized product. I hope to, in the upcoming weeks, have some interviews with some TCT users, some people who have actually used it this past year, because I can talk about what I'm seeing now, but I haven't used it. And I know that's not very helpful for someone who might be interested in purchasing the curriculum. So I hope to talk to some people who have actually used it and to post those interviews on my channel. If you are someone who has used TCT and would be up for a pre-recorded interview where you get all the questions ahead of time and you get time to prepare, please email me and let me know if you're interested in doing that, particularly if you have children who are older than year one, and especially if you have children that you combined years with. But the big thing that I would encourage you to look into, if you're at all interested in the children's tradition, is to sign up for the conference that Amanda is hosting this coming weekend, April 4th and April 5th, which April 5th is my birthday. So I don't know how much I'll be able to come live, but I hope to at least pop in a little bit or watch the recordings of the live event. So this conference is $25, so it's very affordable. And this would give a lot more information about what the children's tradition is, what you can expect from it, and then you might be able to decide better if it is a path that you would like to take. So if you are curious about TCT at all, I would highly encourage you to attend the conference, and I may see you there. Obviously it's virtual, but I just wanted to get this video out so that others can learn about TCT if they are interested in it. So that is the curriculum that I am planning to use for the 2025-2026 school year. There's so much more to share about it, and I plan to share lots more about it in the future. Let me know in the comments down below how your curriculum planning is going for next year. If you are decided, if you're still undecided, what options are you weighing? Please let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.